So, using GTA 6 as our jumping off point, the most anticipated game of the last decade, let's actually dig into how a video game gets this big. How does something go from a concept in a studio to a cultural event that shuts down the entire industry around it? And more importantly, between film and gaming, which one actually owns more of our time and attention right now? When GTA V came out, I was just a teenager buried in textbooks. Every single minute counted. I was grinding to get into my dream university, and honestly, there was no room for anything else. But then the game dropped, and I mean, you couldn't just ignore it. This wasn't some regular release. This was GTA 5, and 13 years later, not even exaggerating, it's still one of the greatest games ever made. Millions of people are still booting it up right now as we speak. So naturally, I did what any completely rational person would do. I sold my camera to buy a PS4, blew through the whole game in 5 days, then turned around and sold it. To be honest, not for 1 second do I regret it, because those 10 days were genuinely, no hyperbole, no exaggeration, some of the best days of my life. Anyway, 13 years later, GTA 6 is finally here. And look, the hype around this thing was so insane that basically no major studio wanted to drop anything big in the same window. Nobody wanted that smoke. Nobody wanted to compete with this. Now, I'll be straight with you. I can't personally verify every number that's been thrown around. But what people everywhere are talking about is this. In the first hour alone, roughly $1 billion in pre-orders, and within the first 24 hours, $3 billion in sales. Let that sink in for a second. Avatar, the highest grossing film in cinema history, James Cameron, the whole thing has made around $2.9 billion total, and that includes re-releases. Meanwhile, GTA 5, itself one of the best-selling games ever made, took 3 full days just to crack $1 billion. If these numbers actually hold up, Rockstar didn't just set a record. They set a record that might never be touched, and here's the thing that makes it even wilder. We still don't know how many millions of people are just waiting, holding off until the official release before they even think about opening their wallets. Why would anyone in 2026 spend more money on a video game than on any other form of entertainment? How did something that used to be written off as a digital toy get to a point where people drop hundreds of dollars on it without thinking twice? To really answer that, we need to zoom out. Take a step back and look at how the entire entertainment industry got to where it is today. Because here's a question worth sitting with for a second. If you had a few hours to kill right now, would you put on a film? Or do you load up your game? Now look, there are a lot of reasons GTA 6 has people losing their minds before it even officially released. Reasons why millions of people were handing over their money before they'd played a single frame. Part of it is trust. Rockstar has never really let people down. If you go back through the main entries in this franchise, it's genuinely hard to find someone who walked away disappointed. But part of it is what this game is actually promising to deliver. GTA 6 is being built to be the most alive, most breathing world Rockstar has ever created. We're talking more detailed, more dynamic, reportedly even more real feeling than Red Dead 2, which already set a standard most games still haven't touched. Every person you pass on the street has their own schedule, their own routine, their own way of moving through the world. No two feel exactly the same. Your in-game phone lets you scroll through viral videos, follow influencers, and stay plugged into events happening inside that world in real time.
Who's back?
Rockstar built this on the latest version of their Rage engine, which basically means GTA 6 is shaping up to be the most technically advanced open-world game ever made. And then there's the weather system. And this is the part that genuinely caught people off guard. War doesn't just change how the city looks. It directly affects the physics of the environment, how vehicles handle, and how the gameplay itself feels moment to moment. And all of that still just the stuff that's been officially confirmed. But here's the thing, and our actual question is still sitting there unanswered. A few years ago, almost nobody seriously entertained the idea that a video game could go toe-to-toe with the biggest films in cinema history. Not in terms of cultural weight, not in terms of raw revenue.
Dracarys.
And yet, here we are. With the release of GTA 6, it genuinely feels like gaming and cinema have entered a new chapter of whatever this competition between them actually is. So how did we get here? Before cinema even existed, how did people entertain themselves? Maybe theater? Maybe live music? Maybe they just read. And then the screen showed up, silent images, then sound, color, then it followed people home through their televisions, special effects, CGI, every few years, a reinvention. And that's exactly why cinema is still here. Cinema was flexible, and because of that, it survived, grew, and still has a massive, devoted audience today. But here's the honest question: how massive exactly? Because cinema never stopped evolving, that's true. And it's still one of the biggest entertainment industries on the planet, also true. But at some point, a new generation started looking around for something different, something cinema couldn't quite give them. A few years back, I was working on a short film, posted a few seconds of it online, and one comment just stayed with me. Someone wrote, "I wish this was a game." I kept thinking about that, turning it over in my head, and eventually I landed on something. Cinema is a window into someone else's vision. When you watch my film, you see exactly what I want you to see. You follow the path I laid out. You feel what I designed you to feel. But a game hands you the keys. One player forgives, another gets revenge. One person plays it straight, and another burns everything down. How far you're willing to go morally, that's entirely on you. Where the line between right and wrong sits, you draw that line. And in that space between good and evil, you're completely free. And look, games aren't what they used to be. We're way past cartoon characters and colorful platformers. The stories are layered. The characters carry real weight. The emotions hit in ways that genuinely catch you off guard. You find yourself caring about people who don't exist, getting invested in outcomes that don't matter, feeling things you didn't sign up to feel. Honor, loyalty, jealousy, revenge, courage. These aren't just themes you observe from a distance anymore, you live them. And depending on what you need on any given day, sometimes you load up a game to decompress, to find some quiet. Sometimes you need to blow something up and feel nothing about it. Sometimes you just want your heart racing for 2 hours straight. Whatever the experience is, it's available right now, on demand, exactly the way you want it. That's the edge gaming has over cinema. But honestly, it's not just an edge over cinema. Sometimes it's an edge over real life itself.
Hi, I'm Josie Marin, and I play Mia in Need for Speed Most Wanted. Make sure you do.
Maybe in real life, most people will never get to feel what it's like behind the wheel of a supercar. But with today's games and today's hardware, a proper steering wheel, pedals, the whole setup, you can get closer to that feeling than you'd expect. You push it to speeds that would get you arrested. You do things that would be genuinely insane in the real world and nobody gets hurt. It actually satisfies something. The detail that goes into these worlds is staggering. The way cities are designed, the way light hits a wet road at night, the sound of each individual engine that engineers spent months getting right. Or maybe you want a horror game that walks you right up to the edge of genuine terror, or a zombie survival world that makes you think, really think, about what it would mean to stay alive when everything falls apart. Today, there's no experience you can't access, no feeling that's completely out of reach. But let's bring it back to GTA 6, because this is a world where you run with gangs, rob banks, hide weapons in your trunk, build a life on the wrong side of everything society tells you to respect. That level of freedom, that level of personal investment in a world that plays by its own rules, it takes me back to something I used to imagine as a kid. Things you'd only ever seen on a cinema screen. Things that exist on the other side of a very clear line in real life. Now, you can get closer to those experiences than ever before, and sometimes that includes things that go way further than most people are comfortable with. Gaming has had a complicated history with that line, and one of the games that crossed it most memorably was Mortal Kombat, one of the most violent games ever made, the kind of thing that sent shockwaves through the media, through politics, through psychology departments. It ended up in front of the US Senate, and sales went through the roof.
Get over here!
Not only did Mortal Kombat survive the controversy, the whole thing ended up creating the ESRB, the age rating system that the entire gaming industry still runs on today.
The way you want it. Why the need for so much gruesome graphic violence? Why not let us imagine
Because it's so much fun, Jan. Get it?
A lot of players feel exactly the same way. There's something about experiencing that level of chaos and intensity in a space where nothing real is at stake. That hits differently, and that's exactly how Mortal Kombat became one of the most beloved franchises in gaming history. Not despite the controversy, partly because of it. Cinema and gaming have always been in competition, sometimes directly, sometimes just quietly eating into each other's time and attention.
Dougal Marshall, welcome to the De Leon.
But like any two industries chasing the same audience, they've also needed each other. Sometimes gaming goes looking for cinema, sometimes it's the other way around. Mortal Kombat is a perfect example. After the game blew up, Hollywood came calling.
It has begun!
And it didn't stop at one film. Mortal Kombat has become a legitimate franchise with multiple films and more on the way. But let's talk about 2013, The Last of Us. The game landed and just didn't let go of people.
What do we do?
You make every...
Between the original and the remaster, it moved over 27 million copies. And it still sits near the top of any serious conversation about the greatest games ever made. And honestly, it earned it. The visuals, the world design, the atmosphere that the score built around every single scene. And that story, that brutal, devastating, deeply human story, it wasn't competing with other games anymore. It was competing with the best things Hollywood had to offer. So naturally, Hollywood came back around. The Last of Us became a TV series. And the question everyone had was the same. Could it actually get close to what the game had done? It goes the other direction too. Gaming has gone back to cinema countless times. A decade's worth of games built on films, trying to capture lightning in a bottle twice. But here's the thing that's always been quietly true about this relationship. These two industries have never been great at completing each other. I genuinely can't think of a single example where something was both a phenomenal game and a phenomenal film. One side always seems to lose something in translation. If you know of one, I'd actually love to hear it. There was a time when cinema had the upper hand, when it was the undisputed king of how people spent their entertainment hours, and almost nobody saw it coming, that in just a few decades, an industry built around controllers and pixels would quietly become the biggest entertainment market on the planet. It all started with something almost embarrassingly simple, the Odyssey. The first time people could actually play a video game in their own living room. No arcade, no quarter needed, just you and a screen. Then Atari showed up and changed the whole model. Cartridges meant you could have a library of games without buying a new machine for each one. That was a bigger deal than it sounds. Then Nintendo walked into an industry that had basically collapsed and brought it back from the dead. Made games feel exciting and accessible again at a time when most people had written the whole thing off. Then Sega entered the picture and turned it into a real fight. Games got faster, bolder, more aggressive. The competition pushed everything forward. But 1994 was different. When PlayStation 1 arrived, it wasn't just a new console, it was a different conversation entirely. 3D worlds, CD-ROMs. Enough space to tell stories that had actually had weight to them, enough power to build experiences that didn't feel like toys anymore. PlayStation didn't just change gaming, it changed what entertainment could feel like. And it proved something that nobody had really been willing to say out loud yet, that games could hold people just as long, just as deep, just as emotionally as any film. And from there, 9 generations of consoles over 50 years, each one pulling the experience closer to something that felt real. Open worlds you could get lost in for hundreds of hours, skill systems that made you feel like you were actually growing, multiplayer that connected you with people across the planet, competitive scenes that became legitimate sports, role-playing games that let you live entire lives that weren't yours. Sandbox worlds with no rules and no ceiling, VR that put you inside the screen, handheld consoles, mobile games that reached people who'd never touched a controller in their lives, genres that didn't exist 20 years ago, graphics that keep making the gap between real and virtual harder to see. All of it moving in one direction, forward. And on the other side of this, your cinema. 130 years old, an industry that survived silent film, the Great Depression, television streaming, a global pandemic, and keeps finding ways to stay relevant. Two industries, two completely different ways of pulling people in. And then there's GTA 6, a game that over 6,000 people worked on for 8 years. Every single detail accounted for. The most realistic, most alive open world ever built. But the question we keep circling back to is still there. When you finally get a few hours to yourself, do you put on a film or do you load up your game? And in the years ahead, in the decades ahead, between these two industries that have been quietly competing for our time since the very beginning, which one ends up with more of us?